Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Chancellor Perman and I presented the Board of Regents Faculty Awards at breakfast this morning. It was such a pleasure to recognize and recognize and honor these 19 members of USM's exceptional faculty. These awards, the highest honor bestowed by Regents, recognize 19 distinguished faculty members in 5 categories. Each award carries a $2,000 prize provided by the institutions and the University System of Maryland Foundation. As a preview to this meeting, we've displayed their images in a PowerPoint presentation. Some of them may still be with us in the audience. As I share the name of each of the award winners into the record, please hold your applause until all names have been read. We had four award winners in the category of mentoring: Dr. Michelle Kukier, Dr. Min Dang, Dr. Eric Schott, Dr. Stella Tomasi. We had 4 winners in the category of teaching: Susan Bindon, Dr. Jenny Davis, Dr. Maria LeBron, and Dr. Samantha Reddy. We had 4 winners in the category of public service: Dr. Charles Adams, Dr. Dennis Klima, Dr. Tiffany Parkman, Dr. Corrine Pubil. We had 4 award winners in the category of scholarship or research: Dr. Carissa Chea, Dr. Galupo, Dr. Yoshi, and Dr. Zhang. We had 3 award winners in the category of creative activity: Dr. Victor Shaw, Dr. Monifa Love, and Dr. John Wesley Wright. And so let's give them all another round of applause. Okay, one of our awardees didn't make it to the ceremony this morning, but we're going to take a quick picture.
But you have to.
Oh, we're going to get this mic right yet. In a separate set of honors, I want to note that Salisbury University President Carolyn LaPree was recognized in the Daily Record's 2023 Top 100 Women in Maryland, along with 9 other honorees from the USM. Congratulations, President LaPree, another first for you and our esteemed colleague. We received an update from the governor's appointment office. We are happy to say that Regent Wallace and Regent Wood, who is on the phone, he has COVID, but he did dial in, have been reappointed to new terms on the board. Congratulations. Along with the student region, who will be appointed very soon, there were 3 new regents who will join the board July 1st. Well, actually 2 new regents and 1 returning regent. So the 2 new regents are Anwar Hassan and Stephen Seibel. And Tom McMillan will be coming back as the third of that group. So again, welcome to the new Regents. We are delighted also to welcome them. At the same time, we will be saying goodbye to Regents Ed McDonald and Regents Julie Oberg. And we have to give Ed a commendation for being the most attentive regent we have. He has not missed a session since joining us. And so Ed, thank you. These remarkable servant leaders will be honored at the June board meeting. In a few minutes, we will hear Chancellor Perman's report to the board. Prior to that, Dr. William Regley, Executive Director of ARLIS, the Applied Research Laboratory for Intelligence and Security, will present the educational forum. ARLIS, the University of Affiliated Research Center for Intelligence and Security Enterprise, is a government agency with which College Park does quite a bit of work. He's going to give us the unclassified version so we can only imagine what the classified version is. He promises not to leak any secrets, so we will not be on the evening news tonight. Of course, we look forward to hearing from our host this morning. And I just want to personally thank President Jenkins for a wonderful evening. You know, as you age, you really start to think about things like macular degeneration. And you'll note that the Regents were very attentive last night to that presentation. And so thank you for an excellent evening, a wonderful dinner, and a superb research presentation. And the floor is yours.
Thank you for those kind words, Madam Chair. Let me start by saying good morning to everyone.
Morning.
Madam Chair Gooden, members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Perman, my fellow presidents, it is a pleasure to welcome you and all of our guests to Coppin State University, USM's urban HBCU, for today's Board of Regents meeting. You know, when I arrived at Coppin now nearly 3 years ago, I laid out a vision for us to become a leader in urban higher education, recognized nationally for our ability to transform the lives of students from all socioeconomic backdrops. That prompted us on campus to have a series of conversations to reimagine Coppin State. At the core of each of our discussions was the notion of a transformational educational experience for our students, centered around the knowledge they acquire, the people they meet, and the experiences they have. And over the past nearly 3 years, we at Coppin State have been intensifying our efforts to elevate our beloved university, enrich student learning, support student development and growth, and create an even more valuable and memorable student experience. An experience, whether in the classroom or beyond, that reflects the inclusiveness of our university. A university where we educate a diverse, multicultural, multi-generational student population that comes to us from 35 different states, including the District of Columbia and 30 international countries. This greater focus on our students have resulted in several university accomplishments over the last several years in retention, new student growth, as well as historic milestones in research, fundraising, endowment growth, graduation rates, and cross-system collaborations, like our new and first partnership with USM for offering a completion degree in data analytics. And we are excited about that partnership. You know, all of this is possible because our faculty, staff, and administration have developed a renewed commitment to working collectively on meeting the needs in our university more intently. Recognized nationally and statewide for our degrees in business, healthcare, criminal justice, social work, psychology, teacher education, and STEM, we continue to expand the boundaries of learning, whether using virtual reality or intentional experiential learning opportunities. We challenge and encourage our students to be fully engaged in the shared governance of their education. An education designed to develop our students to become the world-class thought leaders who represent themselves and Coppin State at the highest level. See, our students bring a passion and determination to excel at all costs to our campus. And together, we nurture and we foster that passion. Our students, well, they see Coppin as an opportunity, as a catalyst, a pathway to the career, social change, and quality of life they desire. Our students come to Coppin because they know here that regardless of where one starts in life, every student on our campus has a chance to be great. This is why Coppin State University is a leader in upward and economic mobility. We are proud of what we do at our institution, but we also know that our greatest asset are our students. They are Coppin. They are the energy, the breath, the excitement, and the future of this university. So before you hear from a few of our incredible students, Ashley Roman, Timothy Johnson, Jaheed Chapman, and Rayshawn Baller, I direct your attention to the screen for a short video that captures the essence, culture, and transformative power of Coppin State University.
We are the best of the West, great Coppin State University, an oasis of knowledge, a nurturing environment built by people who care, built by those who listen and those who dare to be different. This is our home. This is our nest. We are the community. We take pride in who we are, where we are, and where we are heading. Our history and legacy gives us the freedom to soar. Our wings spread wide, carrying traditions of excellence. It runs deep in our blood. We invest in our students. We uplift families. We empower each other. We believe in big dreams. We are the pathway to the future for our nation, for our state, for our city, for our students. We believe in supporting you, whole you. We plant seeds, we water, we grow. We are forever. This is a story that has no end. The opportunities here are the pens that will write your next chapter. So come in as you are and let us guide you towards your dreams. Know you hear him calling. Welcome to Eagle Nation, the place to go all in.
And now I present to you 4 outstanding Eagles with compelling stories about how Coppin State University has transformed their lives.
As a first-generation Latina college student athlete in the science field, I always dreamed of attending a school in the United States to achieve my goal of becoming a doctor while playing volleyball. Earning a full-ride scholarship through athletics at Coppin State University has been one of the biggest blessings in my life. I was born and raised in my beloved Puerto Rico, so leaving my culture, family, and friends with only 18 years of age has been one of my biggest challenges. But I am glad that I have been brave enough to overcome my fears and continue to work hard towards my future. Thanks to all the love and support that I've received for the past 4 years at Coppin from students and faculty members, I have been an outstanding student athlete in every field. Starting from being named the Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference Defensive Player of the Year for 3 years in a row and setting up school and conference records while being named Coppin State Female Athlete of the Year, all the way to being named to the Dean's List every year since I was a freshman and maintaining a 3.8 GPA, which has helped me maintain my position as a student researcher in the Organic Synthesis Laboratory Center with Dr. Hanny Sobey since 2021. We have been able to present our research project, which is focused on the synthesis of biomarkers in metabolic disorder diseases multiple times, including our most recent presentation at the American Chemical Society National Conference in Indianapolis. Due to all my experience in laboratories, now I voluntarily serve as a trainer for incoming freshman students interested in joining this research group. Coppin State has not only provided me a high-level education, but has also given me opportunities and wonderful experiences that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Most importantly, I am beyond grateful to Coppin for letting me embrace my Puerto Rican roots and who I am, even though this is an HBCU. Thanks to that, I am proud enough to say that I have recently become the founder and president of the Latinx Unidos Club at Coppin State University, which is focused on promoting Hispanic and Latinx cultural diversity among the Coppin community. This institution has made me a better and more mature person in every aspect and has grown in me a higher sense of independence and responsibility in every task. Being an Eagle has shown me to trust my abilities and knowledge, to never give up, and always strive for the best, because up until today, I keep amazing myself with all of the things that I am capable of. I know that my younger self will be more than proud of the woman that I have become. I consider Coppin State University as my home away from home.
What is home? Some say home is where the heart is. Then my heart has been in so many places. Living in over 6 continents and 75 different countries, not only as a professional dancer, but a holistic health practitioner, I've learned several ways of how to make home. Through growth and synergy and constructive collaboration, home can be possible anywhere. So transferring to the great Coppin State University as a full-time, quote unquote, non-traditional commuter student was something that gave me a chance to find home in new and innovative ways. From the NBA and WNBA to Disney World, cruise ships, touring with pop stars, I felt home was so unique to me in spaces and places. Don't get me wrong, a home is nice, but a home without family is just a really pretty prison. Finding family in the newness that I was experiencing and I needed to experience on this journey was difficult. Being the only person that looked like me in so many spaces and so many casts, from being the only Black male at a mental health conference was difficult. It was hard to navigate. So stepping onto this beautiful campus felt so familiar in a way that I hadn't felt since growing up in Detroit. People, diverse people, working together, having fun, and at the center, people who looking like me shining. That was the pleasant surprise for me when I got to Coppin State University. The nerves in me were still shaking my first day on campus. 37 years old, the only male in the dance department, my nerves still was shook. It felt like it was the 1990s all over again. The joy and comfort in me was real, but the vulnerability to open up about the difficulties of relocating here was difficult. Facing homelessness and lack of resources when it came to food and community was hard. The staff and faculty at Coppin State literally said, say less. And where they could help, they did. They themselves matched my joy and vulnerability, and I could feel the support. And when family supports you, anything is possible. Flying and soaring became quite comfortable, and to be an eagle, I immediately opened my wings. The 2022 Protecting Black Voices Scholar, the 2022 Michael Jackson Dance Scholarship recipient, the 2022 Black Elective Leadership Council Leader, the Dean's List 4.0 student, recently cast in the 2023 Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope production, which had an outstanding run in February, completely sold out, and recently just cast in the 2023 Black Music Festival, where we'll be honoring Quincy Jones' musical legacy. All those accomplishments sound quite lovely, but I wanted to offer my HBCU the full scope of my gifts. Before the global pandemic, me and my wife created a wellness company, Hands to Heal Tide, where we helped people who help people. We bring space and time to anybody and everybody who wanted space and time. And one of our biggest moments was collaborating in Guam on Anderson Air Force Base with the armed forces, veterans, and military families on mindfulness, meditation, and modalities associated with cognitive behavioral therapy to reach harmony and balance inwardly and within their communities. The outreach was beautiful. So in collaboration with the Title IX office here, Campus Recreation, the Center for Counseling and Student Development, and 8 other offices on campus, we're proud to announce that we're piloting the Mindful Moments, a Gift of Wellness here at Coppin State for the faculty, staff, and students, designed to bring space and time to the entire Negro Nation. Thank you so much.
After leaving military training in the spring of 2019, I had no direction of where I wanted to further my education. One day it dawned on me that I had a university in my own neighborhood. When I stepped on campus, I had a different feeling, a feeling of something new. The day I arrived at 2500 West North Avenue, I arrived home. Coppin welcomed me with open arms and acceptance. This institution has offered many things and has contributed a lot of things to the young man I am today. But not only gaining education, mentorship, family, and experience, but I also developed a purpose. Being involved in programs and organizations such as ROTC, Residence Life, Royal Court, and many more have curated a memorable experience. I've had the opportunity to create such an interesting network. In my network, there are staff, faculty, partners, and most of all, students. I've had a chance to travel to Fort Knox, Kentucky, Savannah, Georgia, St. Louis, Missouri, and other institutions because of Coppin. Part of my time here, some of our best leaders at Coppin have given me the opportunity to meet some of the most influential and inspirational individuals who here are a partner with Coppin's mission in making a better institution for our students and the best West Baltimore for our community. In the 4 years attending Coppin State University, I have dealt with financial insecurities, housing instability, and personal development issues. Within those 4 years, Coppin has supported me with a home to lay my head, a safe space to be my authentic self, an environment to be comfortable with where I come from and the skin I live in. Also a place to guide me to become a better leader, and last but not least, a place to become a better professional. To enroll in as a first-generation college student, to hold one of the biggest student leadership positions as Mr. Coppin, now to soon becoming a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and now being a new father. This journey has had its difficulties, but Coppin has always had my back. Not only my back, but the entire Coppin community's back. Here at Coppin, students are always put first. Over the years, the people here have worked hard to provide scholarships for specific demographic of students, along with resources to push against some of the hurdles we have experienced as students. When I walk across that stage, May 19th, I am more than proud to say that I have attended Coppin State University, and I will forever bleed bold gold and navy blue with my Eagle family. Not only am I proud to say that, I'm also satisfied to tell you that Coppin State University is not a hidden gem I found. It's the jewel that found me.
Coppin State University made my dreams come true. I had the opportunity to join nursing school here at Coppin State University in 2018. And being a Baltimore native, I knew that Coppin State had a reputation of being one of the great nursing schools in the area. The program offered me rigor and lots of great preparation. My instructors ensured that I had a robust clinical experience and also a strong classroom experience. We earned our degrees from Coppin State University. I had an unmatched education as well as my peers. I was able to perform at or above the level of my peers from other institutions, experienced and non-experienced. I also built a network. That network taught me how to build relationships, and it's how I made it through nursing school at Coppin State University. I still consult with my network to this day from nursing school, and I've made lifelong friends. I also had the unique experience of graduating from nursing school in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And so as a nurse during the COVID pandemic, I had the opportunity to work in the ICU, the intensive care unit, where I was able to receive an offer before I graduated as a new grad. I also had the opportunity to take care of unresponsive patients at their most traumatic points. And I was able to, because of Coppin State University, give detailed assessments to these patients and make sure that they had a better care and a better optimal health. After that, I transitioned to the emergency department, where I was able to think on my feet thanks to Coppin State University's preparation, and also have skilled critical thinking to help patients, again, move to a better optimal care of health. I now work in urgent care as a nurse, and I work as a charge nurse where I'm able to oversee the center workflow and give patients care in both an urgent care and a primary care visit capacity. I'm also able to aid in primary prevention of patients' health. When it came time to pursue my doctoral studies, I had no doubt that Coppin State University would be where I would go back to. So I came back to Coppin State University in the Doctor of Nursing Practice program under the phenomenal leadership of Dr. John Tillman and the phenomenal members here at of the faculty. I've received strong preparation in theory and clinical practice. I've seen growth in my writing skills, and I've been challenged to think at a higher level of thought and to transition from nurse to healthcare provider. I've been able to act as a pillar to my community, doing my doctoral work and my life's work, increasing the primary care visits in African-American males. It's also increased my leadership skills. And so now I oversee a training department for one of the largest urgent care companies in the country. I'm reminded of a story of my grandfather on his deathbed in 2013. He was talking to his nurse when I walked into the room. He looked at me and he smiled. And he said to her, he's going to be a doctor. And so now, as I walked across to Coppin State University's campus the other day, I saw the statue of Fanny Jackson Coppin. And at the bottom, it said it's within reach. And because of that, I've been able to make my grandfather's dreams and my dreams come true. Coppin State University has made my dreams come true and also my peers' dreams come true.
Madam Chair, Chancellor, Regents, with that concludes our open presentation. And I just want to say for the record that what you heard today was testimonials written by the students, not by the university, not by the faculty. No one was scripted. We asked them to sit down and write about themselves and Coppin State. And this is what you heard. That is why we continue to say that Coppin State is invaluable to Baltimore, to Maryland, to our region, and to our nation. These young people behind me come from backdrops, economic situations that they may not have received the pathway to a college education, if not for diverse institutions like we have in the USM. So with that, I thank you again. Welcome, and to my Eagles, congratulations and keep soaring.
Wow. What an inspirational and impressive set of testimonies. It is a tribute to Coppin and a tribute to the system. So let's give them one more round of applause. Our next report is the Educational Forum, and today it'll be presented by Dr. William Regley. Dr. Regley is a professor of computer science and the executive director of the Applied Research Laboratory for Intelligence and Security, ARLIS. At the University of Maryland, College Park, ARLIS was established in 2018 under the sponsorship of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense and Intelligence. Dr. Wrigley will be speaking today about the role of ARLIS as a university-affiliated research center focused on intelligence and security. President Pines will say a little more as we kick it off. President.
Go Eagle Nation. Soar Eagles. Great presentation. Another round of applause for our students. Fantastic job. So I just wanted to set the framework for what you're about to hear. Just for those who don't have background about Department of Defense University Affiliated Research Centers. So the Department of Defense every now and then is as you know, it's a very insular organization. But what it has done over the years, over the last 30 years, is have optics to look into emerging technologies, emerging areas. And every time it's done that, it's partnered with the university to accelerate technologies that will enhance national security. It's done that now 14 times, where there's something called a University Affiliated Research Center. That's called a UARC. It's going to do a 15th one in autonomy, and that's going to be at Howard University. And I believe Bowie State is a partner, so give President Breaux a round of applause for partnering on the 15th UARC that will happen pretty soon. In our case, it always is triggered by what's happening in the real world. All of these UARCs that have been created in partnership with the Department of Defense, either a service organization or directly the Department of Defense, in our case, it's with the Undersecretary of Intelligence, has been because there's a need, there's a problem in society that needs an accelerated solution to ensure our national security. So we hired Dr. William Regley in 2018 to lead a very unique, first of its kind UARC. Had never been done in the Department of Defense before. That's something that was focused on intelligence, but really focused on human intelligence. And so all of you are used today with social media. You're inundated with information. You're inundated looking at social media, Twitter, Instagram, other sources of social media. And what's happening today is that all of us in this room can be influenced positively or negatively by information. Well, the work that we do in our new UARC, ARLIS, helps to mitigate that and provide our national security enterprise with tools that they can use going forward. So it's my pleasure to announce Dr. William Regley, who came to us from Drexel University. He himself is a computer scientist. I had to twist his arm to lead this ARLIS. He was actually going to lead another institute for me. And I said, you want to do something special, lead ARLIS. And he's done a fabulous job. Please welcome Dr. William Regley.
President Pines, it's an honor, and I will never forget the meeting we had in your office where you said, how would you like to help stand up ARLIS? And I said yes. And so I want to thank, Chairman Perrin and Gooden, and start with like one personal comment. I'm speaking to you as the Executive Director of ARLIS. I'm actually an alumnus of the University of Maryland, College Park. My PhD is 1995 in computer science, and I'm also a parent. My son's a freshman in the aerospace engineering department. And it gives me deep pleasure to have taken this on for Darrell and everyone, because I always wanted to work on something sort of bigger than myself, something that mattered, right? And it seemed at the University of Maryland, we had an opportunity to do something that mattered. As I shared with one of my colleagues this morning on the Gen Xer, I grew up watching moon landings. And one of the reasons that you want to do science is make a difference, right? So this is, I think, at College Park, the UARC provides a unique opportunity to make a certain kind of difference. And where'd the remote go? So I'll give you a quick overview of it. I'll try and talk only like 10, 15 minutes, probably longer than that because I'm an academic. But then you can have questions so I can clarify anything you might have about ARLIS questions, but also present it to all of you as a possible tool in the set of resources available to the USM system we serve a number of roles already that are actually system-wide roles, and there are more we can do with the network of schools that are here locally in the state of Maryland. So with this as a quick overview, I'm going to hit on a few key points. You can keep these slides, and of course, any of you are welcome to come visit the College Park. So first thing is what Darrell said, President Pine said is, what's a UARC? It's a really special thing. I mean, there are only 15 of them. Some of them are quite famous. There's obviously this one located outside Baltimore with that other school called Johns Hopkins. But these go back mostly to World War II. One or two go back to before World War II. And the thing I want to emphasize here is it's a unique relationship between the university and the government in an area of need where the government acknowledges that we can't do it alone. We need to actually find somebody who can put the smart people in a network to basically maintain the pace of scientific discovery needed to stay up to date. So we're a unit of the University of Maryland, sure. We're a unit of the state, sure. But we are also something called a trusted agent. So this is sort of a hybrid role where if I put my UARC director's hat on, I'm supposed to act without any conflict of interest, including those with the university. I have to act in the government trust. And it puts us in this very unique position where they can come to us as an objective third party about everything. And I'm not there, let's say, excessively representing the work of any particular faculty colleague. I have to represent what the government needs, knowing what the university can do, but also knowing what the government might need done that they don't themselves have the independence to say. So by example, let's go to the next slide here. I'll show you. Actually, I'll go to this one and then I'll go back. So this is a history. It's a little hard to see here in this room, but the history of UARCs, each one appears during a different period of conflict in the United States. The first one appeared, it was designated a UARC later, but the first real government university lab was really the one at Georgia Tech that appeared in the 20s and 30s. The war that was being fought in the World War I was about chemistry. World War II, with things like the proximity fuse, that was about physics. The proximity fuse is the reason for the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. And if you think of the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, it has a set of skills all related to guidance, space, certain kinds of sensor technology, systems engineering. That's their thing. If we move a little bit further to the right, you'll see that there's UARCs that focus on things like information, undersea warfare, cybersecurity, and then here comes ARLIS. So what is ARLIS? So ARLIS is the UARC. This is a great slide. I took these two from the Air Force, and basically it talks about this history of conflict and the conflict we're currently in. You can just pick up the newspaper to see that it's really about social human behavior. It's about belief, the social scientist war. It's no longer about kinetic conflict, although obviously Ukraine is the exception. The biggest thing dominating us is this problem of belief. Different socioeconomic systems that competing influence for resources, what might be happening in certain countries because other nation states might be seeking influence. This is the war that we're in. So if you think that for the last 30 or 40 years, we built systems for observing the planet using satellites, and you're looking at things that are occurring on the planet using satellites and sensors. How do you do that for information? How do you do that for basically disinformation, fake news, as well as economic activities, things like that? So ARLIS's focus is really on this social scientists war. So I want to share with all of you, we're all, at least this side of the room, right? Academics, so we lead academics. While ARLIS is a research lab, ARL, Applied Research Lab, we're not doing basic research the way you might in a classroom. So there's a kind of problem that's the sweet spot for a place like an ARLIS or a UARC. And there's this concept called the technology readiness levels, where if you think TRL1 is like the lab or the mathematician at the blackboard, on the right side, you're actually launching a rocket or a missile or testing a piece of software in the field. So the TRLs go from 1 to 9, 9 being something you'd see in a company or maybe a industrial lab. We exist somewhere about 1/3 to 2/3 the way over. We're supposed to be crossing that valley of death, enabling the sponsor to bring us real problems that are really current and quite difficult. And we are supposed to be able to look into that university ecosystem, find the best and brightest minds, and then design disruptive solutions to those kinds of problems because we are aware of what those problems are because we're talking to the practitioners. And this gives me a moment to talk about, Chairman Gooden, you said, classified research. Yes, we operate what's called a SCIF, right? But classified, it's no voodoo. It's basically no different than if you were a medical school and you would protect the information associated with your doctors and your patients. You can't just sort of talk about, oh, I saw so-and-so and whatnot. As we know from the recent leaks that are in the news, there's information that's not public for a reason. And one of the reasons a place like Arliss has the ability to do work that's classified is because we are talking to the people who have the real problems, right? We get a briefing from a combatant command, or we get a briefing from somebody who's in an office at the Pentagon where they're struggling with some threat. And then it's our job to sort of go, oh, here's how we can help and build that bridge. So I want to demystify that a little bit. It's it really is not that different than, say, the kind of work that might occur in a medical school. But it's that awareness of the problem and the problem driving the research that makes the UARC unique. So when we try to get faculty involved, regardless of the institution that we partner with, we're usually looking for faculty who want to kind of work across that boundary. And that's exciting because the work then, is going to have some kind of impact. You're driving it based on this operational need or impact. So what else do I want to highlight about Arliss? So what makes Arliss unique? I started to say this, that Arliss is the human-centered UARC. So if you look at the other 15, Penn State's UARC is we are the ones that focus on human beings, decision-making, social science, language, and culture. And under that aegis of our sponsor, intelligence and security, most of the problems deal with issues involving human beings. Like, how does a human being use a socio-technical system? So things like influence campaigns that's been in the news. You don't need to do much work to find that there is active foreign disinformation in the United States on your local news feeds, right? Whether it be Facebook or Nextdoor, we have very few ways of really mapping that and tracking it. We know that this occurs in foreign countries, right? Obviously, the early stages of the Ukraine conflict was principally an open source conflict, right? If you're familiar with the outing, if you will, of the Russian downing of the Malaysian Airlines flight, it was all done with what's called open source intelligence. So think of what open source intelligence is. It's crawling through Twitter, it's looking at images, it's doing all sorts of things with this publicly available information. So we have an effort that's basically looking at how does one do that better? How do you build aids where the AI and the human being can work together as a team? Because we're not just going to replace the humans with the AI, we have to build better teammates. Second thing is about insider risk and trust. Best example of that is what just occurred last week, this drop of records by a 21-year-old Air Force reservist who was basically showing off to his friends. So one might ask the question, how did that person get a clearance? And what prompted them to walk out of the room with stuff pushed into their pants so they could show off to their friends? The government would like to make sure that we don't give somebody like that a clearance. And right now the processes are actually quite antiquated because, as you can see, they don't work. So they've come to us as the UARC, neutral third party, to basically be like underwriters labs. How's a polygraph work? How about pupillometry? Social media, does that tell me anything about this person's behavior? These are all things that are of concern, and they touch on privacy issues, it touches on legal issues, and we have teams. We actually have a panel that looks at the legal social implications of this work that the government needs to do. We provide advice back to the government how to do it without running afoul of our societal norms, and it's really tough, as you can imagine. We have another group that's concerned with acquisition and industrial security, so think manufacturing, think supply chain. We have a group of engineers, but they're engineers, social scientists all working together. And lastly, autonomy and AI. We're concerned with how to help human decision makers make better decisions. So these topics are what's called the core competencies. This is what makes Arliss unique. If you're doing something like hypersonics, well, probably, the folks at Hopkins are a better choice. So each of the UARCs has a unique niche. This is our unique niche. But what this enables, and this is what excites me so much at College Park, is it's a way for the institution and by extension, perhaps the whole system, to benefit from these core competencies, because the government has asked us to be the national center of excellence on these topics. So we're engaging with faculty, we're engaging with students. We have some programs to basically bring this capability to the government in the same way, folks at Hopkins have, but we're not going to do it the same way Hopkins did. We're going to do it in a more agile, consortia-like fashion, which I'll say in a minute. So anyway, RLS right now, about 130 people, about $40 million in awards last year. We're ramping up support so we can manage these projects and programs, because it's applied research. It's not just like running a medical school. It's not really a professor in the lab type of model. And we have some strategic areas that might be of interest for folks to know. One is around quantum sciences. We're trying to stand up a center there. There should be some funding coming this year. We're looking at things like competitive analysis, which is really open source analysis of what's going on around the world in certain science and technology areas. Research protection, those of you in higher ed, right, you're concerned with things like foreign influence on your campuses, compliance with NSF, NIH guidelines. We're the UARC that's working with folks at NSF and others to deal with things like the foreign influence on United States campuses and how to best illuminate that, right? The goal is not to eliminate. I mean, it's going to happen. People are competing all the time globally, but we want to make sure that, if we're going to license technology to a company and the technology is sensitive, we want to make sure that company is not affiliated with a foreign adversary, if you will. So certain skills you need to basically do that kind of assessment. We have two unique features that we definitely want to emphasize for the group. One is we have a consortia of universities that supports RLS called INSURE, the Intelligence University Research Enterprise. This is right now a group of, I think we have 15 institutions. The goal here was to extend the capability of RLS to include those of other institutions that have something to offer to the intelligence and security community. A couple local schools are obviously in this network, and we can certainly talk to each of you about how you might want to contribute to this. Typically, this is both pull and push. You may offer capacity to help us do work that brings funding down to the level of faculty or students at your institution, but also working as a team, we realize we can do more than we could as individual institutions. So there's a little bit of a top-down, bottom-up that we're trying to create here. This has been going on since really 2020. So we're really just getting, in some ways, out of the COVID cloud, because we're now meeting and able to travel and get to know each other better. That's one feature. The other feature I want to emphasize, which actually has touched on a number of schools here, is this program we call RISK, which is Research in Intelligence and Security Challenges. This is a unique summer program where we partner with the actual agencies, and it's about training students in what would be a career in national service, where the sponsoring agency actually participates in the internship program, and we provide basically, educational opportunities during the summer for them to get to know what these different agencies are like, what it means to have a position of responsibility, what it means to do national service. So we went from 20 students in summer of 2020 to 50 students in 2022 to 104 last summer. And this summer is going to be like 130. We had almost 500 applications for this. And it's being acknowledged by Deputy Secretary Hicks and the Undersecretary, Mr. Moultrie, as a really unique program, because we are really creating a whole new way of training interns for this very diverse community, all interdisciplinary projects, team projects, stuff like this. So here's my sort of leave off slide, and then we can do some questions. So I want people to think of RLS as a resource for the whole system, but also the system is a resource for RLS. So the getting to know each other might lead to opportunities for your faculty, your institutions, but also you may create opportunities for us that we're not aware of. RLS is also a job catalyst. We think of RLS as basically a tool for economic development, where we attract other companies and organizations around us because we are kind of like a national lab. And where we're located in College Park, we have some government co-tenants in our building. So it's created kind of a little bit of niche within this Discovery District in College Park, which I'm keen to expand upon as well. I think of RLS as a key part of the land grant mission. If I think of the real reason for land grant missions going back to Lincoln, right? A&T, right? It's training in agriculture technology, et cetera. Well, guess what? I mean, many of the jobs in the state of Maryland are jobs that are federal service, right? They're national security jobs, or they're jobs in the state government or federal. So we are basically trying to create that kind of pipeline and ecosystem, and really build partnerships with the institutions. I think we've only begun to scratch the surface. RLS is really a gateway for applied research. So just like if you were at certain other Big Ten school that's outside of Detroit, the motor companies had invested a lot in that school, and there's a certain capability they have for doing applied research. So we're trying to do the same thing for the government organizations we work for and give faculty the freedom to say, well, yeah, I actually want my work to have, more impact. Maybe I'll get involved with ARLIS. And then we can provide that gateway that'll give them access where they couldn't have before. And then lastly, this is a way of enhancing academic impact. We're looking to help hire faculty. We participate in faculty searches. We have a number of departments around the university that are engaged with us with affiliates. So we're trying to figure out how to maximize the ability to bring in students, get students on projects, more students, more faculty, et cetera. So this is just a little bit about ARLIS, and I'm happy to take a few questions. And I think I did okay, 15, 16 minutes.
So question
Please.
for Dr. Wrigley. Well, it's never, you guys are never this fun. Dr. Wrigley, what's the value of this award to College Park currently?
The total value?
Mhm.
So we started off with a contract vehicle. So the government gives us a contract vehicle and they put tasks on the vehicle.
Mhm.
So in 2018, it was $92 million vehicle. And the team we've assembled has been very successful. So that vehicle has been raised now to, I think it's 170-ish $1 million. So that's the awards really since 2018. And now we're working on our renewal. And the final amount on that is TBD, but it'll be more than that. So, and that vehicle is something that when you're working as part of ARLIS in this capacity as a trusted agent of the government, that's how the government can basically say, yes, you're already the expert. So it has a unique property. It's a sole source,
Mhm.
which means we've already selected you as the expert of these topics.
Mhm.
So they can just bring us in very rapidly on projects.
Gary?
Please.
Morning. Thank you for that presentation and for all the great work you're doing. I was intrigued when you engaged with the rest, you invited the rest of the system to participate with you, because my sense was that you have some constraints in terms of the students you're able to recruit, the faculty you're able to recruit, and maybe that could be a force multiplier for you. Is that a constraint that you are running into?
Well, the biggest constraint is we need more people. The work far outstrips
Right.
the number of people we have to do it. So, and this is not just ARLIS, other government labs that I work with have the same problem. It's a talent competition problem. The kind of restrictions, we fall under usually a US citizens only type of restriction, but that's not even the case in general. There are certain things we do for which it's a basic research project and it could be anybody. You don't need to have clearances and things like that for
Yeah, I
every
was really
project. It sort of
more-
depends. that-
Yeah, I was really reacting to your limitations on finding or hiring people, right? Not that there are certain types of people, but just it's a tough recruiting market.
Correct. And that's one of the things where, one model I've had is it'd be great if there were faculty who were, let's say they're in industrial engineering or they do psychology. We have jobs that, somebody could work 3 months for us, right? They could come in, we could get them on a project. It provides an ecosystem. And if I look at my peer UArts, specifically Georgia Tech and Penn State, they do a wonderful job basically creating opportunity for the members of the campus community. But it's sort of push-pull, right? Like people have to come to us and sometimes we don't need to call, and we're also much younger, right? We're 3 years old or 4. So those kinds of opportunities can be created. And
Yes.
that's,
One other comment is the revenue hockey stick was just incredible. The growth of your revenue over the 5 years is just.
well,
Any corporation would love to have that.
thank you. But, I pass credit to the team, but also I didn't emphasize this, I said on the one slide what our core competencies were. So realize these things you see today in the news, whether it be disinformation, fake news, foreign influence, 5G, CHIPS Act, ChatGPT, these are all in our wheelhouse. So invariably, we are getting called on because we're the center of excellence for these topics or among them. So often we find we have either a seat at the table or they're asking us to basically set the table. And part of our challenge has been just sort of riding that wave and staying ahead of it. So yes, the hockey stick has a lot to do with the fact that topics that the government's trying to understand in those spaces, we're getting involved in. So you're seeing the government's growth in those areas reflected in that hockey stick. So we're just trying to stay on the surfboard, as it were.
So how do you set up collaborative relationships with the other universities in the system so that you can draw on their resources as well?
Yeah, terrific question. So we've got a master agreement that's based on the consortium model that one other UARC established. That was the UARC at Stevens University. We borrowed their model, modified it for us, and the new UARC at Howard is actually basing their model on our model. So we've got a framework where there's a master agreement, so we can get you under the umbrella. And then the challenge really becomes relationship building. It's sort of, you need people who want to understand the mission problems. You know, remember that TRL, right? So many traditional academics would like to have their grant funded. And my response is like, no, we don't do grants, but if you want to come with us and learn about these problems, if you want to walk the floor, you'll find there's a lot of places where your expertise could have an impact. We may have a current project or a new one, but you have to do what's called use-inspired research, you know, in the Pasteur's quadrant way of viewing things. You know, it's not basic research. My idea, it's, oh, what's your problem? Here's the idea I can offer, or here's the part of the team I can form. So for us, that relationship building takes time, and we're doing it kind of one institution at a time. You know, we find the right couple faculty, and then they sort of get in the loop. Please, yeah.
Andy?
Well, thank you for the presentation. My question is more about so much of your work is certainly technical. How do we go about doing this? Equally interesting to me in this domain is, should we do this? Like, there are all kinds of like moral, ethical questions involved in this. And so I was looking through all of the different, I mean, you have sociologists, anthropologists, people with great quant skills. Like, is there a role either in what you do or something ancillary to it for the humanities? Ethics, philosophy, history.
Well, we actually, I believe, are the only UARC that I know of that operates what's called an LC panel. The LC panel stands for Ethical, Legal, Societal Implications, because there are topics that come up where, certain foreign nations have no problem using AI weaponized against their own citizens. So if we're going to study that, how do we study the implications? Because we're not going to do that to our citizens. We don't want to do it to foreign citizens. So like suddenly you have a very sticky question, right? And by the way, I'm not saying we're doing that kind of work or that we have any answers, but you bring up a really important point that almost I would say every project, there's probably maybe 20% of the projects involve basically some kind of, well, how would you do human subjects research on this? What's consent mean? So again, almost like a medical school, right? If you're dealing with a certain kind of invasive therapy or a new kind of drug, well, you got to get approval. So we're addressing this head on, and indeed there are plenty of questions where somebody who has a humanities ethics background, could be involved in those questions. And for us, it becomes, how do you resource that? I mean, is it a part of the research problem, and are they on the team? We just work that out case by case. But yeah, no, 100%. In some ways, the organizations that do traditional kinetic weapons have it easier, right? You take it out to a test range, you fire the missile, and you go thumbs up. Us, it's like, can I even do that? It's challenging, especially because it's being done to you, right? So, yeah.
Louis? Okay, all right. Any other questions? Yes, Sarah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really informative. So I have talked to some students on different campuses in tech spaces who, as you mentioned, because of where we're located, I feel like a lot of the tech opportunities are typically in relation to national security. At least those are being pushed through a lot of universities. And so some students are looking for opportunities for variations to the space. And so you mentioned pipelines, right, that you're trying to develop or that you are developing. And so I wonder if you could speak more on those pipelines and how maybe you can expand into other areas. I guess it's more of a question for some of our presidents. Expand to other areas of technology to make sure that there are opportunities, like there are ample opportunities for students to find, to gain a better understanding of different spaces in tech and figure out where it is that they want to pursue their career down the line and not necessarily be pushed towards like the default sometimes in this space. And I understand, of course, that these pipelines are here in part because there's the challenge of recruiting, but just kind of like some things that have come from students regarding, as of course, Regents Merrick mentioned, this kind of like the ethicalities of that sometimes students aren't inclined to enter a space like this. And so what are we doing to make sure that there's versatility within the tech sphere and opportunities for them students? So I just hope you could speak to us more about the pipeline and then also just hear from some of the presidents about maybe some of the tech opportunities available at your campuses, whether it pertains to national security or others.
Yeah, the risk program in particular was really focused on pipeline. And we're driven by the sponsors because we're soft money organization. So we basically can do what somebody pays us to do. There's no reason that kind of footprint couldn't expand beyond just the main DoD organizations that support it now. It could be other branches of the federal government, but really the kernel of risk that I'm really proud of, and it's not just me, by the way, my colleague Aaron Fitzgerald really leads the charge on risk. It's really about national service as a calling, rather than, going to injection advertising on your Facebook feed.com, right? I mean, there are plenty of jobs out there where, one might question, is that a good use of your skill to build that kind of technology? We're trying to find opportunity for folks to basically experience that belonging to something more important that I longed for as a kid myself. So I certainly think there's programmatic things one could do like that. And I do think it does take a little bit more effort because it's not going to come altruistically from some, company writing the check. It's going to come from some sort of not-for-profit, independent, university-led perhaps group to get the kind of funding you need to bring those students in. So that's kind of the unique thing about risk. And my hope is that you could expand that to basically be, really producing folks who want to go into some careers in national service or but there's nothing that inherently limits it except that we don't have the people or necessarily the contacts in that world. So, but if other institutions wanted to step in, we could certainly franchise that model. It's not something I want us to hold on to. I want it to go kind of viral. So by all means.
Good question. All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Rick.
No, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you.
We'll now have the Chancellor's report.
Thank you, Chair Gooden. I need to say that we've had a terrific morning. Starting with the celebration of the excellence of our faculty award winners. I don't hide it. You've probably seen it. I get emotional listening to what our faculty are doing together with the staff that work with them, with our students. It makes me feel very good, and I'm not embarrassed to get emotional. Chair Gooden, I join you in welcoming our new regents and thanking those whose service and leadership have meant so much to the board, to the system, to our students, to our state. And I want to thank Dr. Egley and his team at Arliss for describing to us their work intended to protect the security of our nation and its people. Let's get right into some important achievements beyond what we've heard this morning across the system, beginning with our host, Coppin State. As President Jenkins noted, and as I'm sure you all feel, these are exciting times at Coppin. I was honored to help cut the ribbon on the new Eagle
Achievement Center, supporting students' academic, personal, and professional success. The center benefits from a $2 million grant from Truist. That's the largest corporate commitment in Coppin's history, which establishes the Truist Hub for Black economic mobility. Just a few weeks after that, BGE announced $1 million in scholarships to support Coppin STEM students. And Dr. Jenkins, I know it must have been a great honor for the Coppin State University baseball team to meet with Governor Moore and members of the General Assembly last month to celebrate their 2022 MEAC championship. Stunning performance. Congratulations to you and the entire Coppin family. He's got his ring. Bowie State won a grant of $1.5 million from the U.S. Department of Education to support one of its marquee programs, the Black Male Educators Project, whose goal it is to put more Black men in the classroom and support them to teaching success. Earlier this month, Bowie was featured in the New York Times for creating its own tech intern pipeline, connecting students directly with companies and bypassing a tough process often in Silicon Valley. And with depression and anxiety spiking among our children, Bowie State University has just won a $5 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education to train school-based mental health providers and prepare graduate students in culturally responsive practices. And finally, that white-hot spotlight on Bowie's arts program hasn't dimmed. Music legend Dionne Warwick visited the campus for the official naming of the Dionne Warwick Theater, the only performing arts space bearing her name. So on all of this, congratulations, President Rowe. Researchers from UMSIs have won a 3-year, $2 million grant from the United States Department of Energy to explore how microalgae can reduce carbon dioxide emissions from power plants. UMSIs is also joining the University of Arizona in a $5 million USDA grant examining best farming practices in a rapidly drying climate. UMSIs will model growing conditions decades out to support a move to native and adaptive crops that cut water use, curb emissions, and weather climate uncertainty. So, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Regent, we're on it. And UMSIs is partnering with Frostburg State to offer a joint master's, this is very important, system in environmental management and sustainability. The program brings together the environmental expertise of UMSIs and the large, diverse student body of Frostburg to populate academia, government, and business with leaders who can address our most urgent sustainability challenges. Thank you, President Goodwin. At UMBC, I congratulate 2 newly minted Goldwater scholars, Arjun Kanjurpain in biochemistry and molecular biology, and Anya Viswoon Aten in biological sciences. The scholarships are the nation's most prestigious for undergrads in the STEM disciplines. But they're not the only retrievers celebrating awards. Several UMBC faculty have won highly sought after NSF Career Awards. Dr. Mercedes Burns will study arachnid evolution, focusing on that spider we all grew up calling Daddy Longlegs. And Dr. Deepak Kerala will examine how RNA structures within the genetic material of certain viruses enable the viruses to replicate. Dr. Deepak Madan research unlocks the secrets of materials that turn heat into electricity. And Dr. Tyler Josephson is developing a new approach to writing code in computational chemistry. Congratulations, Vice President Detloff. Supported with funds from the HBU settlement, UMES is introducing new academic programs, including interdisciplinary programs in art therapy and music production, both of them firsts for the system as a whole. The U.S. Department of Commerce has announced $3 million going to UMES to expand broadband access and enhance cybersecurity on campus and in the Princess Anne community. And in a couple of weeks, several of us are going to join President Anderson to officially open the Pharmacy and Health Sciences Complex. That 130,000 square foot building consolidates the university's 9 health programs. That's the most of any U.S. HBCU. And it represents UMES's commitment to taking exceptional care of its Eastern Shore neighbors. President Anderson, we're looking forward to that event. UMB has announced a huge sustainability milestone with renewable energy purchase agreements and certificates. UMB has reached for the first time ever 100% renewable electricity. And at UMB, the School of Nursing and the Enoch Pratt Free Library have partnered in a program placing nursing students in city libraries. The students get relevant clinical experience, and as important, Baltimore residents get no-cost health services. It's modeled on a popular UMB program that places social workers in libraries. These services fill growing gaps in community care, and they allow UMB students and faculty to meet neighbors where they are and in a place they trust, the library. And Dr. Nadine Finnegan-Carr in UMB's School of Social Work was just named Executive Director of the UMB Center for Violence Prevention, which will marshal multidisciplinary expertise and resources to curb violence in Baltimore City and beyond. The University of Maryland College Park is also addressing our existential threat of gun violence. It's part of a consortium of DC metro universities that released evidence-based recommendations to end this particular national public health crisis. Dr. Geralds, Dr. Pines, I thank you for taking up this important problem. I can't imagine any more important work. Now, focusing on College Park, I want to mention the Grand Challenge grants, which represent its largest ever investment in projects which tackle humanity's greatest and gravest problems. Across the university, $30 million is going to 50 projects in global health, clean water, social justice, democracy, ethical technology, climate change, and more. And speaking to the grand challenge of climate change, UMD will support Maryland's ambitious new environmental law, Climate Solutions Now. Its Center for Global Sustainability will team with Maryland's Department of the Environment to model cross-sector emission cuts and catalyze policies that move us to net zero. I just mentioned UMBC's goal. add? College Park leads the nation with 49 Goldwater scholarships awarded over the past 15 years. That's the kind of excellence that UMD continues to open up to all students. It just joined 15 leading universities committed to serving students from small and rural communities, building accessible pathways into high ed. Congratulations, Dr. Pine. We appreciate all of this. Frostburg State, they know something about serving rural students. It's won a $3.5 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education for the REACH project, partnering with 5 area school districts to grow the number of highly effective, culturally responsible special educators in rural Appalachia. In addition, Frostburg and Allegheny County Public Schools have inked a new dual enrollment program, the Bobcat Academy, giving local high school students no-cost access to Frostburg courses. President Nowacek, as Frostburg celebrates its 125th anniversary, you know I'm proud and we're all proud of the way you serve your students and shape our Western Maryland communities. Thank you. Moving from Western Maryland to the Eastern Shore, let me commend the Seidel School of Education at Salisbury University. Of the 46 Tri-County semifinalists for Maryland's Teacher of the Year, representing Wycomico, Worcester, and Somerset counties, fully 3/4 are Seidel School alumni. You serve that community, Dr. LaPree. To me, it proves, number one, that Seidel alums are deeply committed to serving school children on the Lower Shore, and given the fact that they're all nominated, these alumni are some of the best teachers around. Governor Moore heaped praise on Salisbury undergrads this spring at the Posters on the Bay Research Expo that you held in Annapolis. Students presented their projects in medicine and health, social justice, and economic inclusion, and climate and the environment. It's an important reminder to state lawmakers that undergraduate research also matters. And that research at Salisbury is showcased in the nation's Fulbright program. At our last meeting, I praised Salisbury for its title as the nation's #1 producer of Fulbright students among master's universities. Well, Salisbury's Fulbright success is set up to continue. This year, Salisbury already has 12 semifinalists. More than half of the university student applicants for a Fulbright reached the semifinal stage. Great work, President LaPree. Towson, also well represented among Fulbright candidates. 6 students selected as semifinalists, the most in Towson University's history. Additionally, in the Poets and Quants list of best undergraduate business schools, TU's College of Business and Economics was ranked 26th among all publics, named one of 11 schools to watch in 2023. So President Perot will be watching. A few weeks ago, Towson announced its membership in the American Talent Initiative, an alliance of more than 130 fourth-year colleges with a shared goal of enrolling, supporting, and graduating an additional 50,000 lower-income students by 2025. Very essential work. Thank you, Dr. Perot. Since we last met, UMGC has announced 3 new partnerships: an alliance with the supply chain industry's largest association, will serve its members and their families by lowering costs, and increasing speed to a bachelor's degree. Teaming up with the multinational Armstrong World Industries, UMGC will open higher ed access to that company's 2,800 employees. And UMGC and Purdue University Global have announced a multi-year partnership with GetSet's new sponsored degree platform to help employers fill key openings in cybersecurity. Thank you, Provost Tomietto. At UBalt, Neha Law, Director of Externships at the School of Law, has been named one of 5 Bellow Scholars for her research into paid externships as a tool to advance student equity and autonomy. At UBalt's Schaefer Center for Public Policy, they're leading a multifaceted effort to grow the number of students pursuing public service, including internships, a new public service minor, and a non-degree certificate. The goal is to swell state government capacity at our regional centers. The USM in Southern Maryland will host a free summer camp for high school students interested in STEM. It's the Camp for Future Problem Solvers, and it focuses on mechanical design, electronics, and coding. But math and engineering skills are paired with teamwork, innovation, preparing students for creative, collaborative leadership. And USG is launching a new digital and TV ad campaign highlighting the strengths of USG's close-knit campus community and its emphasis not only on academic excellence, but on career success. Dr. Abel, Dr. Kademian, thank you. Switching gears. As you know, we marked Sine Die earlier this week, so I'll turn now briefly to the just ended legislative session. Starting with our operating budget, we have good news. State support to the USM will grow to $2.1 billion in fiscal year 24. That's an 11% increase over this year's adjusted budget. This support allows us to limit our tuition increase for in-state undergraduates. It funds year 2 of enhancement and investment in our HBCUs. It supports new facilities that expand our academic and research capacity, and it covers pay raises and climbing benefits costs for our employees, helping us attract and retain the very people who drive our excellence. Turning to the capital budget, again, we see strong support, a total of nearly $295 million. Projects funded or advanced include $30 million for the new interdisciplinary engineering research building at College Park, $20 million for renovation of Smith Hall at Towson, $12 million terms of legislation. As always, there were a significant number of bills that impact the system and its people. Of course, I won't speak to all of them. There are 2 bills I want to highlight. Senate Bill 426 authorizes this board to establish a quasi-endowment fund of up to $150 million, which will generate income to support financial aid for our students. Our universities can allocate money to the fund, which is designed to ensure that it grows in value each year. The quasi-endowment is just one way we're serving our lower income students, doing our part to ensure not only that they can access a USM education, but that they can afford to stay in school until they have that diploma, or credential in hand. A second bill passed this session, Senate Bill 142, is one I mentioned at our last meeting. It authorizes this board to award a grant supported by private donor funds to our student regent for the first year of the two-year term. All of us get to see up close how much time and effort our student regents commit to this board. Acknowledging that sacrifice by providing some relief is an important incentive and support for students interested in this demanding role. And I'd be remiss if I didn't again honor the leadership and generosity of our colleague, former Senior Vice Chancellor Joe Boffman, who inspired this effort and supported it. I'm grateful to all of Maryland's elected leaders for their commitment to the system and to the work we do. I'm grateful for their faith in our students and their boldest ambitions. And I thank our USM government relations team, their colleagues across the system, everyone who undertook the hard work of steering us through such a productive session. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Any questions for the chancellor?
Very quick. Chancellor, thank you for that. Would you just mind saying a couple more sentences about the endowment? You use the term quasi-endowment. Are we legally not allowed to have traditional endowments? Like, how is this different than the foundation? Any more information would be helpful.
It allows us, this is the non-finance guy explaining it, Dr. Smirk. It allows us to take a piece of the traditional endowment and set it to the side. It stays as an endowment, it stays invested, and the interest on that endowment can be used for this special purpose. Any other questions?
Seeing none. Thank you, Chancellor,
Thank
for
you.
your report. We'll now move on to the report of the council. Then we'll begin with Dr. Bro and the Council of University System Presidents.
Good morning, Chair Gooden. Good morning, Chancellor Perman, to our regents, our leaders in the shared governance groups, and to everyone gathered here today. I'm pleased to give the report for the Council of University System Presidents, but I must begin by thanking our host, President Anthony Jenkins, for hosting us today, and congratulations on the wonderful presentations that you provided. I truly understand why the Chancellor is emotional with hearing from such outstanding students and hearing their accounts and their heartwarming accounts of what Coppin State University has meant to them. You are to be commended for your leadership and all that you're doing to support those students on their journey and all of your students across the campus at Coppin State. So I'll ask for a round of applause for our host this morning. Highlights of what's happening on each one of our campuses. And congratulations to my colleague presidents and your teams on your campuses for the amazing work that's underway. It is truly inspiring to hear about the research that is happening and the highlights that are being enacted on our campuses as we continue on with this academic year. On behalf of CUS, let me begin my formal report. You have a written report in your packet. CUS last met on April 10th and beforehand on March 6th. Our last meeting it was a virtual meeting. On March 6th, however, we met in person and had a full agenda. We heard from Troy Stovall, the CEO of TEDCO, who presented on how the USM, our system, can get more involved with the organization. The organization is focused on fostering and including Vice Chancellor Hogan gave a legislative update, including an update on the governor's report. You just heard the chancellor report out on that. Our Associate Vice Chancellor Skolnick spoke with a group about developing a request for proposals to hire a consultant to study the provided a reminder about our facilities renewals and associated reporting. AAG Bainbridge gave an update on the DOE, Department of Education update on the third-party servicers. And then we ended up with the meeting, having a discussion on shared governance. The April 10th meeting was held virtually, as I said. Vice Chancellor Hogan again provided a legislative update. This time covering the whole session as the 10th session as it was winding up, and sine die was just this week. There was another robust discussion on shared governance, and then President Nawalchik led a discussion on the middle state self-study process. This concludes my report at this time. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Any questions for President Brooke? Seeing none, we'll move on to the University System of Maryland Student Council, Mr. Siddiqui.
Good morning, Chair Gooden, Board of Regents, esteemed colleagues, presidents. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Anthony Jenkins and the entire Coppin State University team for hosting us here today. And if I may, I also want to thank Dr. Moore, I don't know if he's still here, Vice President of the Enrollment Management and Student Affairs, and Dr. Wilkes, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, who I had a chance to interact with. And I just think are phenomenal people on your team. So thank you all so much for what you do. And lastly, to the students of Coppin State, I want to thank you. You see, here at the USM, we try to provide you with the resources and avenues to succeed. But at the end of the day, it is you that can take advantage of these opportunities, and it is very clear that you have been able to. So thank you all so much for that. The last time I was at the Board of Regents meeting in February, we're still accepting applications for the first ever Board of Regents Student Excellence Scholarship. In just a little over 2 weeks, we received 300 applications from students across the university system, and that is not an insignificant number. The executive team and I, as well as a former student regent, Ada Beams, had a chance to review those applications, and believe me, it was not easy. There were so many students doing such amazing things. It really goes to show the dedication and drive that so many of our students have. But once we selected a total of 12 students, 3 from each of those 4 categories, Dr. Zakiya Lee presented those names to the Committee on Student Education and Policy, and they had a chance to hear those awardees last month. And today, you, Board of Regents, will have a chance to hear a little bit more about the wonderful students that are doing amazing things on our campuses. On the USMSC level, one of the issues that we have been hearing and discussing is students' access to hybrid education. My team and I had a chance to talk to students at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, University of Maryland College Park, and UMBC, where students, especially the graduate student population, voiced concerns about trouble accessing their classes through a virtual method. Many of the professors who are set in their more traditional ways are not always receptive to change. Some of these students were young parents. Some were working 2 part-time jobs. Others had some medical condition that they were dealing with, and it was very difficult for them to cope, leading to stress, burnout, and even some choosing to drop their college career. In those cases, they were asking that they be given permission to access educational materials online for a temporary period, especially since many of those classrooms are equipped with having a virtual platform after COVID. At our next USMSC meeting, which will take place this Sunday at Towson University, we'll have a chance to meet with some of those students and have a larger discussion with the representatives. At that time, this concludes my report to the Board of Regents, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Report. We'll now have the Council of University System Faculty by Dr. Sehar.
Good morning. My name is Atma Sahu, Professor and Chair, Mathematics and Computer Science Department at Coppin State. I am also serving on the Council of University System Faculty Committee and on Executive Committee. As Professor Holly Brewer, Chair, USF, is on travel, enjoying her professional activity at Oxford, London, I am honored to present Council of University System Faculty Report before you. Madam Chair, wonderful Regents, our fifth USM Chancellor, Professor Perman, Honorable University Presidents, Dr. Jenkins, and guest. The Council of University System Faculty had two general meetings since USF Chair's past report. One was on February 24th, another was March 28th. Also, the USF Executive Committee met twice on March 6th and April 10th. I will highlight what we are working on these committees. We are gathering information now more systematically to address a range of issues of concerns, many of which will be resolved in near future. We are making strategies and plans to systematically evaluate and target issues that need improvement or attention. I'll start first about USF Executive Committee. The Executive Committee works closely now with a new Senior Vice Chancellor, Dr. Alison Lynn, right here, and with Assistant Vice Chancellor, Dr. Zakia Lee. Most people know her. The intent is to set up a task force that align with some of our priorities, focusing on faculty status and workload, research, retention, and recruitment, and mental health. In addition, less formally, in tandem with the Library Council and Maryland Pact, plan is to make recommendation regarding open access. We are working hard to assess shared governance across all 12 campuses and we have designed two surveys, one for few leaders in shared governance. The another one is broader faculty at each institution. We appreciate the help we have received from both BSU President Aminta Bro and from our Senior Vice Chancellor, Dr. Reed. In particular, distributing the broader survey. While responses are still coming, I can report as of April 7, 7 of the 12 campuses have responded to the first survey. More importantly, 10 of 12 campuses have widely distributed the second survey. At this moment, we have 734 responses, which will provide impressive comparative data to make recommendation about how to identify and encourage best practices and where to focus efforts of improvement. Both surveys close on April 18. Now, the second portion of my presentation is about general body meeting. At our meeting on February 24th, we passed a resolution to support removing current state restriction on graduate student collective bargaining. The text is included in the material provided to you. Note that this text was responding to bills proposed to the Maryland legislature in prior years and not to the year's legislative bill that sought to remove restriction on both graduate students and the faculty this year. Regarding committee progresses, I am particularly excited, of course, with all the committees, but the particular one is the new research committee is beginning to address a range of issues that have arisen from many representatives, including those related to research policies, open access. This committee is reaching out to broaden our membership so that we have input from all campuses to include issues that arising from a range of campuses. As we know, the USM enrolls more than 170,000 students in 12 campuses. And our wonderful chancellor just reported that our enterprise has grown from 1.5 million, if I'm correct, to 2.5 billion, from 1.5 billion to 2.1 billion. With this successful teaching and R&D pathway, we have more work to do, particularly in the R&D area. Other committees have were very busy as well. These committees are like the Educational Policy, Faculty Concern Committee, the Legislative Affairs Committee, Awards Committee, Rules Committee, and I'll just describe very shortly about each of these, the activity in these committees. Educational Policy Committee has organized town hall to give guidance to faculty across the USM system on how to respond to ChatGPT and related AI writing programs. They are also still focusing on issues on open access, as well as on transfer credit, policy issues, and issues which we will take up in our next May meeting. The Faculty Concerns Committee. This committee has been focusing on issues related to mental and physical health and has a plan for a town hall on such issues in early May. The Legislative Affairs Committee worked on the resolution regarding the restrictions on graduate students and collective bargaining, as I mentioned a few seconds earlier. But now, committee has taken up other issues related both to the faculty and to a range of other issues in response to issues raised in this spring's legislative session. The Award Committee. The Award Committee is delighted that its recommendation for faculty awards were accepted by the Board of Regents, and today everyone received the award. The Rules Committee has been working on changes on our bylaws to allow better methods of voting in response to greater reliance on electronic and hybrid meetings. They have polled our members and are suggesting revisions on our constitutions. They will also be organizing our election for our next meeting. This concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions for Dr. Sahu? Yes, Farm?
Thank you for the report. I have a quick question. I know you mentioned that you guys passed something saying regarding the bargaining rights for graduate students. Is this a shift in the position from the council last year?
No, it's not a shift.
Okay. All right. So you guys are in support or not?
In support.
In support? Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you for your report. We'll now go to the Council of University System Staff by Dr. Patricia.
All right, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Board of Regents and USM presidents, good morning and happy spring. I want to first thank President Jenkins and Coppin for hosting us today and for a really lovely and engaging evening yesterday. April is in full swing and staff help guide our students and institutions toward completing the spring semester and getting us through graduation. So while we're busy with our roles on each of our campuses, CUS has been advancing its work over two key areas in the past few weeks, the USM Shared Governance Survey and the Board of Regents Staff Awards. So for the uninitiated, CUS conducts an annual shared governance survey that queries those involved in shared governance on the health of shared governance at each of our institutions. This year, which covered the 2022 calendar year, we received 110 responses, which is about a 60% response rate. In addition to many Likert scale questions, the survey contained open-ended questions and responses, and this year I've included those in the larger report for your review. The report is linked in my written update and is also attached in the larger packet of information provided to you today. I would be happy to share with any of you the campus level reports should you be interested in seeing those. A clear and consistent finding in the survey this year is that supervisors continue to be supportive of staff members who wish to engage in shared governance. So that is something we are really grateful for. Additionally, 78.9% of respondents agree or strongly agree with the statement that shared governance is alive and healthy on their campus. This is a really great finding. Thank you to my Vice Chair, Susan Holt of UMB, for her help in putting together these reports. I do want to note that the shared governance survey, as I mentioned, is only sent to staff who are actively involved in shared governance. So CUS is hoping to explore ways of conducting a broader shared governance survey to gain a better understanding of the health of shared governance on our institutions more broadly, beyond just the perspective of those who are directly involved in it. The other priority in recent months has been processing the Board of Regents Staff Awards applications and selecting the winners. So our committee put in many, many hours reviewing the packets of these wonderful nominees that the president sent forward. And we used aggregate scores to identify the winners. So this process is done and I will be compiling those names for your review in the coming weeks. So I would like to thank Denise Ehrman of Towson University for her leadership in this process. It's truly a significant effort, and she has led it flawlessly, actually, for a number of years. So I am appreciative of that. I've also asked that committee in charge of the Board of Regents Staff Awards to put focus into revamping the non-exempt packet before we close out our term in July. As July is rapidly approaching, we are going to begin the process of electing our new CUS executive committee. So that will start this month with a review of all of the positions available and some recruitment for those roles. That concludes my report for all of you. I will take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dr. Patricia? Hearing none, thank you for your report. It's now time for public comment. Ms. Wilkerson will moderate the public session. Ms. Wilkerson.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good. Okay, in accordance with the guidelines for public comment, which are posted on the USM website, the agenda includes 15 minutes set aside for this purpose. Each recognized speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. Requests for public comment should be submitted 48 hours before the meeting and should pertain to comments on the agenda. The public comment period is a time for the board to listen to comments made by the public. The board will not respond to comments at this time. As needed, follow-up to questions and comments will be provided following the meeting. We do have one speaker today. His name is Leo Hojanowski. He's asked to speak on the topic of civic engagement related to what is on the agenda, the consent agenda today. So Leo, and Leo's a student at UMBC.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
The U.S. Department of State has determined the forced detention of more than 1 million Uyghurs, forced sterilization of thousands of Uyghur women, network of state-run boarding schools for Uyghur children separated from their families, widespread restrictions on free speech, and efforts to eliminate the Uyghur language amount to genocide. The persecution doesn't end at China's borders. Students on U.S. college campuses face surveillance, manipulation, and coercion from proxies of the Chinese state. I stand here today sharing these atrocities without fear of my education being disrupted or my family being harassed. But Maryland's Chinese and Uyghur students cannot say the same. It is estimated that of the $820 billion in U.S. endowment funds, a significant share is invested in firms complicit in genocide. But it's not possible to know the extent of USM's exposure without a thorough formal investigation. Article 177 of China's securities law, which prohibits Chinese firms from providing many internal documents to foreign regulatory agencies, impairs the ability of investors to engage in adequate due diligence. A growing number of student government organizations at universities including UCLA, UC Irvine, University of Memphis, and my own University of Maryland, Baltimore County have passed resolutions calling for divestment from complicit firms and decrying the techniques used to coerce Chinese and Uyghur students into censoring their own civic and democratic engagement. This nationwide student-led movement to divest from one of the most horrific human rights abuses of my lifetime is before the University System of Maryland, and the time has come to act. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Leo, for taking the time to share your thoughts with the board. We appreciate your input. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Decisions regarding which items to include on the consent agenda were made by me and the committee chairs. However, any regent may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Before I move approval of the consent agenda, I ask if there are any items that any region would like removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Yeah. Do you have an item? Oh, no, your mic. All right. I move approval of all the items on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. We'll now move on to the committee reports, and we'll begin with Regent Atman, who will present the fiscal 2024 schedule of tuition and mandatory fees to be voted on by the region.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. The USM continues to recognize our responsibility for providing an affordable education to our students. And we also recognize our obligation to have operational vitality and sustainability for our campuses. As a result of the budget success that Chancellor Perman referenced earlier in his remarks, we are able to cap our tuition for resident undergraduate students at 2% this year. This increase will enable USM institutions to remain competitive and concurrently foster an affordable and challenging higher education learning experience. For all institutions, resident undergraduate full-time total costs, which include tuition and mandatory fees will not exceed 4.5% year over year. Tuition rates for non-resident undergraduate students will increase by no more than 5%, and their total costs, which include tuition and mandatory fees, will not exceed 5.6% year over year. Included in the item is something I just wanted to highlight, a very innovative and noteworthy new recommendation related to Coppin and University of Maryland Eastern Shore, who are requesting approval in this item to extend in-state tuition rates to students who live in states without HBCUs, or in a couple of cases, very large states with largely underserved populations that might have one HBCU. There is a list of the target states following the item summary sheet on attachment A. As we know, nationally, HBCUs have experienced a surge in interest and enrollment growth. And over the last several years, applications for a cross-section of HBCUs increased nearly 38%, according to the Common App. The greatest uptick among that growth has been among students who do not have an HBCU in their state. With this proposal, Coppin and UMES seek to expand their geographical enrollment footprint and hopefully their actual enrollment. The two institutions have the capacity to absorb the additional students, so this is not expected to adversely affect any in-state students or applicants. Moving on to graduate rates, except with one exception, full-time and part-time tuition rates will not increase above 5.3%, with most institutions below 5%. The one exception, which we've actually voted on before, relates to the physician assistant program at UMES, which is increasing in FY 2024 to a larger extent, but it will still be substantially below the market for a comparable product. So seems to be a good idea. As I mentioned previously, mandatory fees are also included in the schedule. These fees support services and activities that are not primarily funded by either tuition revenue or state general funds. For example, student unions, recreation centers, and technology fees. For the most part, the increase in fees, any increase in fees can be attributed to recent increases in employee salaries and fringe benefits, and the increase, as we all are experiencing, of inflation related to food, energy, and other items. Of course, student affordability is a priority consideration when increasing fees and rates. As costs increase, every effort is made to increase financial aid in order to maintain aid packages in line with proposed tuition. One other thing I'd just like to emphasize is that in accordance with board policy, institutional leadership are required to meet with student groups who have a formal role in the discussion and review of proposed fees and changes to existing fees. A brief summary of the student engagement process conducted by each campus is also included in the agenda item. So I would like to move at this point for the approval of the tuition and mandatory fee schedule as submitted. Is there a second? Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. Audit Committee approved an amendment to the policy on public ethics of members of the Board of Regents. The change to the policy is in reference to Title 15, and it is being replaced by Title 5. And the reason for this replacement is that Title 15 has been removed. Title 5 covers the Maryland public ethic laws. Audit Committee felt that it was important for this to come before the full Board of Regents as a reminder that we are all governed by this ethics policy that covers financial disclosures, lobbying, and conflicts of interest. And with that, Madam Chair, I will make a motion for approval of the policy changes. Second?
That's a quick question. Just based on what was in the document, it appeared that the only change was literally
The
like a
reference to the
reference.
title.
So is the content of Title 15 the same as of Title 5 or vice versa? Is
Correct.
there any substantive difference?
There was not a substantive.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Thank you.
The motion carries, and we will move on to the Intercollegiate Athletics and Student Athlete Health and Welfare Committee report by Regent Ganella.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At our committee's last meeting on March 13th, Dr. James Borgers, the Chief Medical Officer for the Big Ten Conference and President and CEO of the U.S. Council for Athletes' Health, provided us a detailed and excellent presentation on student-athlete mental health in intercollegiate athletics. The full presentation is provided in materials, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at that, but I've been asked to provide a brief summary. And as Dr. Borgers presented, and we're all aware, in recent years, there's been an increase in student-athlete concerns regarding mental health. Gen Z students born between late 1990s and early 2010s are reporting higher rates of anxiety, depression, and distress than any other age group. Gen Z athletes are reporting higher levels of negative emotional states than non-student athletes. And this isn't limited to just the students. A study was done by Utah State that reports that the more parents spend on their kids' sports, the less the kids enjoy it and the more pressure they feel. So as he indicated, there's clearly a need for the universities to respond to their student athletes' mental health needs. Dr. Borgers shared some best practices for our student athletes, coaches, athletic trainers regarding mental health education. Talked about the need for athletic departments to promote and create a culture of mental wellness and a psychologically safe team environment that stems from a sense of trust and respect. Talked about athletic departments educating coaches and athletic administrators to help develop this culture, identifying local mental health resources, and developing a plan to address student athlete mental health. Talked a little bit about athletic directors and coaches having to reach out to their students to support mental wellness education, to avoid negative words around mental health, and to emphasize appropriate sleep and rest for the student athletes, providing a safe space to talk about mental health, and acknowledging that a stigma may exist, so stressing the importance of seeking help should they be in need. Also talked about coaches being good role models and modeling good self-care to empower the student athletes to take control of their own mental wellness. Dr. Borgers also shared some of the best practices around mental health emergency action plans and shared with us that the NCAA has released a mental health best practices document that addresses key components for understanding and supporting student athlete mental wellness. This includes the identification and referral of student athletes to qualified practitioners, pre-participation mental health screening, written institutional procedures for management of emergency mental health, and routine mental health referrals. Also, a mental health emergency action and management plan. This plan should include university leadership, students, coaches, should involve parent education, emergency and non-emergency intervention options, collaboration with healthcare teams, mobilization of student support systems, and follow-up on the various referrals. There's also recommendations around emergency mental health for those students that have demonstrated a sense of feeling out of control, demonstrating violence or imminent threat to themselves, is unable to make sound decisions, and or may be perceived to be incoherent or confused. the bottom line is he shared a lot about the need for more education, the need for infrastructure, policies, practices, procedures within the athletic departments for both coaches, trainers, administrators, and really creating an environment that allows the student athletes to feel empowered to seek help when and where they need it. So again, I would encourage everybody to take a look at that presentation. It was very, very helpful for our committee. We're certainly going to monitor it going forward and have him back to provide some updates. But we really appreciated the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what the individual universities are doing and the NCAA. And with that, that concludes my report. Regent Fish.
I'm sure there's applicability in that report that would go across not just our student athletes, but all athletes. So is there a way that that information is going to get back to our respective campuses beyond the athletic departments?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, we're making the report and the presentation available, and I think we're going to encourage others to take advantage of him as a resource and the organization. But obviously, we were starting with the student athletes within the ICA and Student Health Welfare Committee.
Sarah?
Thank you. I have a quick question about whether or not, so I think that student athletes typically also have higher GPAs in academic performance. And so in order to like stay within programs and stuff like that, they have to be performing at a higher academic level. Do you think that academic pressures, kind of like performing in the classroom despite having to miss so much class time, plays into these stressors? And maybe it's something to look into when we look at resources for mental health, kind of like not just the pressure put on to perform well in athletics, but also in the classroom.
Well, I'm a little out of my league in answering that probably, but in terms of the presentation, in terms of what he shared, yes, absolutely. That certainly was one of the elements that factored into the stresses that the student athletes are facing and what they're dealing with, and maybe indications and signs that those are some of the things that are leading to some of the issues and the problems. But again, I think this is a perfect area where we've got resources to bring to bear for folks to learn a little bit more, and that could definitely be a topic for a future discussion.
Any other questions for Regent Ganella? Yes, President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that report. I think that is extremely important for all of our institutions to really pay greater attention to this type of or to our student athletes. There is a conversation taking place in the NCAA, especially with regards to Division I sports, that is also talking about potentially the responsibility that institutions will have for the well-being of their student athletes after they graduate. And that can be a significant financial cost to our institutions. And so I think it is worthy to have some additional conversations and insight onto what that would look like for our student athletes, obviously, but also for our institutions. And so I just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that Dr. Borgers did address that as well in a brief sort of fashion and sort of the continuum. He also addressed what was happening before the student athletes got to college, and really looking at it holistically. So there's a lot more than I shared, but you're 100% correct.
So Jeff, maybe we should take an action for the ICA to follow up with, look at that going forward so that we have some type of baseline for where we are and where they want us to go.
I think I've got Dr. Pines and then Regent Presley.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So towards President Jenkins' comment, I'm actually on the NCAA Board of Directors, where this issue came up about the holistic student athlete, also creating a fund for two causes. One, for medical care post-athletic time at the institution. I don't think that's ever been done at the NCAA, but there is a desire to do that going forward and making it equitable for, schools at Division I, Division II, Division III level. They haven't put the fund together yet, but they are considering it. And then number two, As President Jenkins and also as Regent Ganella spoke to, there's a huge transformation committee that had made recommendations toward the holistic student athlete and mental health support. And those recommendations are still in the works, but they should be coming out fairly soon. And then finally, on our campus at College Park, we have a mental health task force that should produce a series of recommendations for both students, student athletes, staff, and faculty. And we're happy to share that with my colleagues as that becomes available. So.
Thank you. You?
Yeah, Regent Ganell, I just wanted to support, having heard the presentation in the committee, just, I think a tone, I think, of Dr. Borges was to try to emphasize that it was important that throughout the athletics department at all levels, there's a respect for the problem that exists. And I think that was a big part of that, which goes to Regent Fish's comment too, across our universities as well. But that was a key component. It's one thing for the leadership to understand like us and nod our heads, but the emphasis was that we got to drill down to all the levels, the staff, the athletic trainers, all of that to have a healthy respect for that problem.
Yes, President Brooke.
I'd like to address the question that was asked about the broader issues of mental health on our campuses beyond the student athlete. Many of our campuses, picking up on what President Pines was saying, are focused on mental health in a way that we've never been focused before. We've always been focused there, but it's at a heightened level. And many of our campuses participate in a survey that's put out by the American College Health Association that gets to the root of the issues. So to the questions about what is the causation and what's happening for the students, that work is being done through typically our counseling services. And that's been done pre-pandemic for many, many years. So we do have other information that we draw upon to guide us in our planning and addressing the mental health needs of our students on a broader scale.
I think that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Ganella. The Open Meetings Act permits public bodies to close their meetings to the public in circumstances outlined in 3-305 of the Act and to carry out administrative functions exempted by 3-103 of the Act. The Board of Regents will now vote to reconvene in closed session. The agenda for the public meeting today includes a written statement with a citation of the legal authority and reasons for closing the meeting, and a listing of the topics to be discussed. The statement has been provided to the Regents and is posted on the USM's website. May I have a motion to close the meeting? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the meeting is